I worked with Barney, the dinosaur, back in the day.
Danielle Vega was 9 years old when she joined Barney and Friends.
And he was this huge, incredible purple dinosaur that loved hanging out and just being the friend that every kid needed when they were younger.
It was 1996, and back then they'd put open calls for auditions in the newspaper.
And my mom found an ad for a children's show that was holding auditions at a local studio, Katie Studios, in Dallas, Texas.
The line to the first audition wrapped around the corner. Danielle and her mom waited hours until it was her turn. She ended up going through 3 or 4 rounds of auditions.
And the one audition that stands out to me is when I was led into a room that had pretty much almost a life-size plush doll of Barney, the dinosaur, sitting on a chair.
When Danielle says life-size, she means roughly her size.
And a table about as long as the length of the room, full of directors and producers. And they were asking me to sing Happy Birthday to Barney.
She must have killed it because 2 weeks later, Danielle got a phone call inviting her to join the Barney cast.
So I got on the phone and I was sitting on the couch at our house and just like trying not to just burst like the 4th of July firework. And I didn't do that until after I got off the phone.
Danielle played the character Kim on Barney and Friends. She was one of dozens of kids to appear on the show. The kids would sing and dance and play games with Barney and his dino friends, Baby Bop, BJ, and Riff. Barney and Friends helped launch the career of child actors like Danielle and even Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez. Danielle's very first appearance was in the home video Barney's Sensational Day.
Let's see now. What could we paint?
How about something or someone big and bouncy and colorful?
Like Danielle, her character Kim loved to sing and dance. She also played the flute and loved panda bears. Barney and Friends was Danielle's first real break. Up until that point, she had only attended acting classes and didn't have any experience on TV. Luckily, Danielle knew someone on the inside. Like, literally inside the Barney costume.
I did consider Barney a friend, and he's still a friend to this day. Both the character and the actor who was inside the Barney suit. And it was just incredible to work in that kind of environment that was built on friendship.
Danielle's talking about David Joyner. He was the actor in the Barney costume at the time, and a familiar face for her on set. David was her acting coach before she was cast on the show. He was a friend and mentor, teacher and coworker, someone she could trust and learn from. The same goes for Bob West, the original voice of Barney.
He was a lot of fun to work with, always just in a positive mood, and everyone was really accepting of the fact that, they were working with kids, which I think, just for adults in general, you have to have that mindset where you just are prepared for it every day, I think. As a mom, I can say that. So, and everyone just was always really kind. He would even sit with us at lunch sometimes and just crack jokes and make us laugh.
Bob and David didn't just make her laugh. They made kids like me laugh at home, too. From Connecticut Public, I'm Sabrina Herrera. This is Generation Barney, a podcast about the media we loved as kids and how it shapes us. For years, 2 men brought Barney to life. One was the voice and one was the body, and together they entertained kids around the world. Bob West and David Joyner created such an iconic character in Barney. The goofy laugh, those gravity-defying jumps, the special Barney magic. And just like the character meant so much to so many of us, Barney meant a lot to Bob and David too. Episode 2, Dinosync.
Hi there, this is Bob West, the original voice of Barney the dinosaur. Oh boy.
Bob West wears a lot of hats today. Graphic designer, creative director, voice actor. But back in the 80s, voice acting was his main gig. He did voiceover work for things like radio commercials. And in 1987, Bob got his big break.
You know, my Uncle Buford was a dream chaser. He dreamed of chasing rabbits, mostly.
If this sounds familiar, you probably spent a lot of time at Chuck E. Cheese growing up. Bob was the voice behind two animatronic characters at the iconic children's restaurant chain. Jasper T. Jowls, a hound dog who plays the bass guitar, and Pasquale, a chef who loves playing the drums as much as he loves telling jokes. Bob liked being part of the Pizza Time Players, but he still continued to go on auditions. One day in 1988, Bob's agent tells him about an audition for a home video series called Barney and the Backyard Gang. So he goes to the first audition and then another one. As a voice actor, Bob had been developing different characters for years. Not just the voices, but the emotional core of those characters too. And Bob himself was shaped by a lot of different voices in his childhood, especially ones from Mel Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices.
I got big funny ears, they are so long and flat. They are the very reasons I never wear a hat.
I grew up with all those classic cartoons, Bugs Bunny and Sylvester and Foghorn Leghorn and all those great characters that Mel Blanc did, and any of the Hanna-Barbera later. And so, I have this whole library in my head of my childhood voices that I heard. And so they really do, what you see and hear when you're a kid really does stick with you, really does.
This is so real. My family and I still quote some of Barney's sing-songy lines to this day, like apples and bananas.
I like to eat apples and bananas.
For the audition, Bob is given something called a model sheet, basically a sketch of this Barney character.
So you get to look at the character and you think, well, he's big and he's kind of round, so he should probably sound kind of low and kind of like this, kind of opened up in the back of the mouth. But he's also very friendly, so he's going to vary in pitch. He's going to go up and down. He's going to be very friendly.
The voice Bob originally did at the audition was close to what Barney sounded like once he joined the PBS family as part of Barney and Friends. But at that moment, when Barney was still a home video series, the creators wanted something a little different. A deeper voice, something a giant T-Rex could sound like.
So Barney started out as what I call the Wagner Barney, which was kind of, hello, Tina, how are you? And he was very large and forced way down in my range. It made it a little bit difficult to maintain over time.
Bob was cast as Barney, but in voice only. Turns out he was told he was too tall for the suit they were already building. Plus, Bob isn't the greatest dancer in the world. His words, not mine. And so someone else would have to be inside the Barney costume.
My name is David Joyner. I was the Barney body from the years 1991 until 2001.
David's path to becoming the man inside the purple dino was a little unexpected. Before becoming Barney, he was a software analyst at Texas Instruments in Dallas. Remember those expensive graphing calculators you had to buy in high school? The ones you played Snake or Tetris on during class? Yeah, that Texas Instruments. So David was working at this company, but on the side, he was an entertainer, and he taught acting workshops to local kids. He was so good at it that he helped prepare the child actors for a 2-day workshop in Texas, with casting directors and agents from Los Angeles in the spring of 1990.
One of the casting directors from Dallas, her name was Shirley Abrams, came in and she saw me working with these kids and warming them up, and she thought, wow, that's pretty unique and impressive. And so she asked me if I had a resume and headshot, and I gave it to her, and she says, okay, I'm gonna bring you in for a project.
That project? No, it wasn't Barney. It was something grittier. It was America's Most Wanted. The casting director, Shirley, wanted David to audition for the role of a drug dealer, and he eventually got the part.
bragging to all my friends at Texas Instruments, hey, I'm going to go to Arkansas. I'm going to shoot this thing, and get a call from Shirley 2 weeks before we're about to shoot it. She says, hey, I got bad news. I have good news and bad news. The good news is they found the guy. The bad news is we're not going to shoot it. But I've seen you work with kids. I've seen your range being a drug dealer. I'm going to call you in for something very important.
Soon after, David got an audition sheet for a character named Barney the Dinosaur. The original costume actor was leaving Barney and the Backyard Gang, so the creators were looking for someone new. David wasn't thrilled by the idea of being in costume, and he had never actually done costume work, but Shirley, the casting director, wouldn't take no for an answer.
She says, I'm going to send you some videos, study the videos, so when you're watching the videos, you can be very prepared when you come to the audition. Well, I'm watching the videos. Every time I pop in a video, I fall asleep. Now, sometimes when I'm not able to figure something out, I will meditate on it and pray on it and ask for signs. And a lot of times things come to me in my dreams. So the night before the audition, I pop into one of the videos, fall asleep, I wake up, I go to bed. And before I lay my head on the pillow, I ask God, please give me a sign, because I want to at least show justice to Shirley. Well, I have this dream, and in this dream, Barney's in my dream. Barney passes out. I have to give Barney mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to revive Barney.
The next day, David drove to the audition, and he says he got a sign. Literally.
I'm sitting at a stoplight. My spiritual number's 22. I look up, and there's this billboard that says, breathe life into your vacation, Southwest Airlines. Didn't think anything of it.
David says he got to the parking lot, and there was another billboard with the exact same ad. Breathe life into your vacation, Southwest Airlines.
So I stop, I say my meditation, my prayer. I get out of the car, I'm walking across the parking lot, it hits me. Barney was passed out because he didn't have enough life. If I go into this audition, I breathe life into this character, I'm going on vacation. And so the rest is history.
David was cast as the body of Barney. He got his start in the costume not on the small screen, but on stage in front of a live audience.
So I'm at the theater. I'm standing behind this curtain, and the announcer comes out. And this is my first time being in front of an audience as Barney. Now, as an athlete, the adrenaline's kicking in. I'm standing behind this curtain, and you hear the announcer, who did you come to see? And you hear this, Barney! And I go, whoa, who did you come to see? Barney! And I'm standing in the costume going, wow, this is amazing. This is better than I thought. And then you hear the kids stomping and hitting on the bleachers. Barney, 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 Barney. So my adrenaline is pumping up. So when the curtain opens up, I just leap and start jumping and moving, doing bell kicks and waving. And the song has this little beat at the end. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to see if I can do a 360. I want to do a 360 because at the time that was a big thing with MC Hammer. And when I was doing like performances and I do Hammer Time and I would stop, do a 360 and land. So I said, okay, let me see if I can do this in the costume. So I jump and I do the 360 and I could hear the crowd going, ah. So then I'm thinking, okay, at the very end of the song, I got to sell them with the 360. And I jump, I do the 360 and I land it and they just hear this big roar. Ah!
Hey, boys and girls, moms and dads.
That jump became David's signature move. He'd leap into the air, spin his body 360 degrees, and land. David spent the next decade creating other little movements that came to define Barney's physical persona. He wiggled his toes, he hopped and bopped around on television screens, during live shows, and at meet and greets. David was an athlete growing up, so his Barney was full of energy.
I wanted Barney to have a lot more life and a lot more expression and to feel like, not like the leader of the kids, but to have more of an influence, like I'm part of your team. I'm just like your coach, so to speak.
That's exactly how watching Barney felt. He wasn't an authority figure or someone I had to listen to. He was my friend, someone I could dance around and play pretend with, or talk to when I was sad or happy. I had human friends, I promise. But Barney opened up a magical world for me, one where I could be anyone or do anything. All I had to do was believe. That was only possible because of people behind the show like David and Bob. It's incredible how two people were able to work together to create one persona. They really had to be on the same page. More on that after the break.
Hey, Generation Barney fans. If you're enjoying this podcast and want even more long-form storytelling like this, please consider supporting Connecticut Public with a donation. Connecticut Public is a nonprofit media organization, and support from members and donors makes creating podcasts like this possible. Visit ctpublic.org/donate to contribute $5, $15, or whatever you can. Now, let's get back to Generation Barney.
One of the beautiful things about Bob also is he turned off Bob West and turned on Barney. When I got in the costume, I turned off David Joyner and turned on Barney. But everything that was infused in Bob West went into the voice of Barney. Everything that was infused in David Joyner went into the body of Barney. And so we meshed. We separated our egos and put Barney to the forefront.
David Joyner says he and Bob West had to develop a secret code to bring Barney to life as seamlessly as possible. They called it
Dinosync.
The thing that people started saying was that David was the soul of Barney and I was the heart of Barney. So we had the heart and soul going on. But the Dinosync itself, I think, just came about in an organic way because out of necessity of trying to be able to make things sync up, but just getting to know each other and getting to know each other's rhythms. A big part of that was getting to know each other's habits. What do we do at the beginning of the scene? How do we react to the kids? How quick is the reaction?
This idea of Dinosync, the joining of the heart and soul, it mirrors exactly what Barney taught us. Working together, sharing, listening to each other. Bob and David had to do all of those things while creating the character of Barney. They got to know each other's performances so well that David's movement was usually just a few frames behind Bob's dialogue, which made things easy for show tapings and live performances.
David developed a little hand signal. He would just be talking, and I would see his hand kind of really subtly make a kind of looping motion with his finger in the air as we were talking. And I would know that that meant that David wanted to do a 360. So I would ad-lib right into stupendous. And David would leap into the air about 1,000 feet, carrying that giant costume upwards with him. That one stuck. That one definitely stuck. That was a big one.
David says they eventually didn't even need a signal. They were just that in sync.
Dinosync.
David's 360 turns are way more impressive now as an adult. Imagine spinning around several feet in the air in a giant Barney costume. At the same time, David also had to think about Barney's face. He'd use this bar inside the costume to move Barney's mouth as he sang songs, and to bob his head up and down as he danced.
Barney is one piece. The head's not separate. It's one complete costume. It weighs about 70 pounds, and we actually measured one time, and it was like over 120 degrees sometimes in the costume because of the heat and the steam, and of course the steam from the body also.
The costume got so hot that David started prepping his body for the high temperatures. He would go to a nearby track and do sprints in the afternoon when the Texas sun was hottest. David also had some friends in the military, so he called one of them up and asked them how they prepared for wearing so much gear in the heat.
And he says a lot of it's mind over matter, and we have what we call the 40-degree effect. I said, what's that? He says, you say in your head 40 degrees, 40 degrees, 40 degrees. No matter how hot it is, you say 40 degrees. And so what I would do before getting in costume, I'd do my meditation, and then I'd say to myself, 40 degrees, 40 degrees, 40 degrees. I don't care if there's sweat flowing all down my face. I'm 40 degrees and I'm happy. 40 degrees.
For David, and Bob too, Barney was a character that they grew to love. But they didn't fully grasp just how much love there was for Barney outside their bubble. That changed as they started doing more and more live performances and meet and greets. One of those was just down the road from our studios in Hartford, Connecticut, at the City Civic Center. They were expecting maybe 600 people at that 1992 meet and greet, but Connecticut Public Television told Bob 6,000 people showed up.
And when Barney stepped out of that elevator and everybody started to see him, there was just this huge roar that echoed through them all. And it was like, ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. We always think of it that way because that's what it felt like. Barney was this rock star. It was amazing. It was just wild.
That feeling never really went away. The show's success surprised Bob, not just during the Hartford event, but pretty much all the time.
We were constantly checking ourselves and saying, this is unreal. It was a unique situation. It was something that had never been done before in children's television for kids of that age. We had a pretty good handle on understanding that this thing was kind of a unicorn.
Bob and David became aware of the show's popularity not only at these meet and greets and live performances, but also in their everyday lives. They had these Barney and Friends tour jackets, and they got a lot of love whenever they'd wear them in public. Often fans or parents of fans would come up to them everywhere, from grocery stores to airplanes. On one flight from Dallas to New York, Bob was rocking a Barney watch.
And a flight attendant saw the watch and she asked me about it. And again, she asked all the right questions, and I tell her that I'm Barney's voice. And she said, oh, it's great. And then a few minutes later, somebody shows up at my seat with some paper item and asked me to sign an autograph. I'm like, oh, okay. And then a few minutes after that, somebody else shows up, and then a couple more people. And at some point, there are like 6 people in line by my seat on this airplane asking for an autograph. It was so funny.
David had a pretty similar experience. He'd be upgraded to first class or given champagne on flights. In bars and restaurants, moms would come up to him giggling, asking for his autograph. And one time, during President Bill Clinton's first inauguration, he was invited to MTV's star-studded ball for the newly sworn-in president. After marching in a parade all day as Barney, David gets back to his hotel and he's flagged down.
And as I'm walking by the lobby, the woman says, Mr. Barney, Mr. Barney. And I go over, I say, yes. She says, here, I have something for you. A gentleman left these for you. They're tickets. And I said, really? She's like, yeah, they're tickets. And I open them up, and they're tickets to the MTV ball. And I was like, are you kidding me? I get to wear my purple tuxedo?
Oh, boy.
He means an actual purple tuxedo, not the Barney suit. So most people celebrated when they found out Bob or David was Barney. But it wasn't all sparkles and magic like in Barney's life on the show. There was a lot of hate directed at the character. We'll get into that next episode. But there was also hate directed at David personally. Not because of the character he played, but because of who he was.
I get a call when I'm doing Barney. I get a call from my hometown news reporter from the Decatur Herald and Review. And he asked me to comment on an article that was in Esquire magazine. And I had no idea what he was talking about, so he asked me if I would, go get the magazine and then give him a call with a comment. Well, in the magazine, the Klan had found out that the guy inside of the Barney costume was African American, was black. So they banned their kids from ever watching Barney again. So he asked, what's your opinion? And I said, well, actually, when I read it, I laughed. And he says, what do you mean you laughed? I said, well, it's the Klan, and I can't change their opinion. I said, plus, what we're trying to do is represent love. If someone's trying to represent hate, the last thing they want is to love. And if my skin color then changes that opinion for somebody, I can't do anything about it because that is what it is.
David says he didn't let those difficult moments get to him. He embraced the magic of playing Barney. David and Bob ended up spending more than a decade of their lives as Barney. They weren't the only actors to play him, but they spent the most time in the role. But all good things must come to an end, right? Bob retired from voicing Barney in the year 2000. He was ready for the next thing. So he moved to Los Angeles for more voiceover work and also established himself as a creative director and graphic designer. The next year, David left the show. He moved to LA too and pursued other acting roles. He also became a tantra massage specialist. On occasion, he would fill in as Barney at live events and even trained other Barneys for appearances abroad. Even though they left Barney and Friends, Barney didn't fully leave them. To this day, David proudly rocks a denim biker vest with Barney embroidered on the back when he's out on his motorcycle.
And sometimes I'll pull up or I'll walk into a place and they're like, "Hey, are you with the bike club?" I say, "Yes, I sure am." And then I turn around, show the back and say, "I'm with the Love Club."
Love was and is David's thing. In a way, David had been preparing for the role of Barney all his life. Like, growing up, his parents always preached love in their household, so much so that there was a mirror next to the front door.
And our parents encouraged us, before you walk outside, look in the mirror and say, "I love you," so that you're walking outside with love. Now, little did I know that I'm literally training for this character, being able to walk outside with love in my heart. So then when I also got the role, it wasn't like I had to put on a costume and a facade and become the character. It was almost like embodying what I've already developed into the character.
David was Barney long before he was cast as Barney.
I love you.
The character continues to have an impact on Bob, too. Playing him was always more than just a way to pay the bills.
When we get these amazing bits of feedback from people who, talk about Barney, saving their life or helping them get through a tough divorce when they were a kid, that's another one. Or when somebody comes up to me at a pop culture convention and says, "My family emigrated from Vietnam and we watched Barney and we all learned English watching Barney." It's impossible not to feel humbled and to feel, like, it's a real privilege to be able to have done this.
Bob regularly does pop culture or fan events where he hears directly from fans about what Barney meant to them. The novelty of hearing these stories never wears off, and Bob has heard a lot of them over the years.
There was a mom who wrote to us back in the day, and she said that her son has autism and that he was pretty much nonverbal. And he was, I think, 5 years old and had started watching Barney sometime before that. And he came up to his mom in the kitchen one day while she was in there doing something. And he wrapped his arms around her leg and he said, "I love you, Mommy." And she said he had never done that before. And she attributed that and so much more of his opening up and becoming verbal to watching Barney. And that acceptance and learning as well kinds of patterns of interaction with other people, with adults or with other kids. When you get messages like that, you can't ask for anything more than that. It's that makes everything we've done definitely worthwhile.
Worthwhile for Bob, David, and so many others, including me. I stopped watching Barney and Friends when I was 8 or 9 years old, but the character has stuck with me as an adult. Barney did more than tell me how to treat people with love and respect. He showed me. And yes, I know he's not real, but those are real lessons that Bob and David helped me learn. Together, they shaped the character of Barney. They shaped a generation of kids and themselves, too.
Barney taught me how to be a man. Taught me how to understand the power of love and how love can flow through moments that if there is no love, it just kind of seeps through.
Barney just kind of lives outside of the world in terms of being affected by the negative. That's really important, that we remind ourselves that we don't have to allow ourselves to be negatively affected by things around us. But at the same time, we have to exercise empathy. And I mean, he's the master of empathy.
Bob West and David Joyner's work on Barney and Friends meant a lot to the kids watching from home, but it also meant a lot to the kids on screen with them. Kids like Danielle Vega, who we met earlier.
The way that they worked together was purely just mind-blowing, and thinking about it now, it's really amazing, considering how much work they had to do to go into making it seem so seamless. And that, to me, that type of professionalism, that type of work ethic, have definitely helped to mold me into the actor and, just professional that I am today.
For Danielle, it was always really cool seeing herself on TV.
I would purposely push the limits on time getting to school so I could see myself just pop up on the screen. My mom yelling at me from the garage door, "Come on, we gotta get to school." And I'm like, "Just wait, please. Mom, I'm on TV." So it was a very, very cool experience.
It was more than just cool, though. Working on the show made Danielle feel validated. It wasn't just her big break. It was also an opportunity to see people that looked like her on TV.
There was an episode where we talked about grandparents, and my grandparents came to visit. And I had Mima and Pop Pop, who were of African-American descent. But, if you see me, most people, will look at me and say, she's mixed. She's not white. She's not black. Maybe she's full Hispanic. I mean, the truth is I've got all of it in me. So whatever you guess is probably correct.
Growing up, I went to a small private school in a pretty affluent town. As a Latina, I often felt different from my classmates. People would ask me why I had tan skin or why I lived in a small apartment and not a big house. The thing is, I didn't have to explain myself while watching Barney. I could just be me like the kids on the show. They all came from different backgrounds, races, ethnicities, even abilities.
To be able to see that, I think as a young child, to see either yourself or be introduced to someone like that's out of your norm is important, because once you see someone in your everyday life, it's not a shock to the system. You're not staring. There's no awkwardness. It's just there's a sense of acceptance because you've already been introduced to it on your favorite show.
Danielle left Barney and Friends after its 6th season. Like the rest of us, she grew up and aged out of Barney.
I believe I got too tall, and I think at some point they just recognize that they have to get younger or just shorter kids, and I did not fit the bill anymore, unfortunately.
She felt okay about moving on. Barney opened the door for other opportunities like the Hulu show East Los High. Danielle's still acting to this day on top of being a mom.
These particular shows that, have held such a big part of your childhood are never fully going to go away. I don't think that I'll ever not be a Barney kid, and I'm totally okay with that.
I'm still a Barney kid too, but others, not so much. There was a lot of Barney hate back in the 90s.
Oh boy.
From kids, their parents, college students, there was even an I Hate Barney secret society.
I thought, Barney is doing great things for our daughter. But then soon I began to see the dark side to Barney.
It just was a thing where people just love to hate Barney.
It made me wonder how much was actually about Barney at all, and how much of that hate was about messages of love and kindness to other people.
That's next time on Generation Barney. This episode was reported, written, and produced by Meg Dalton and Lily Tyson. It was edited by Cassandra Basler. Sound design and mixing by Jay Cowett. Jay also composed the podcast's theme. Additional music in this episode from APM. Megan Fitzgerald is our project manager. Additional editing help from Katie Tolarski, Erica McIntosh, Bria Lloyd, Catherine Shen, and John Henry Smith. Marketing support provided by The Podglomerate. Legal review by Lou Levy from the firm Lerman Center, PLLC. Lauren Komorowski is our Chief Digital Officer. Vanessa De La Torre is our Chief Content Officer. Generation Barney is produced with support from PRX and is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. Special thanks to PRX's Stephanie Quo, our muse and fairy podmother, and also Mike Russo, Grace Abler, and Tony Carlson. To learn more about the podcast, visit ctpublic.org/Barney. I'm Sabrina Herrera. Generation Barney is a production of Connecticut Public.
I have to say that no, I was never a method dinosaur. I would never run around chomping people. I'm a Vegisaurus.